Fred and his weird sex fan?
It's for the channel, Jay. It's for the channel. So I sat through what was available for Velma, the new show on HBO Max, and it sucks. Surprising, I know. It's not even a so bad it's good kind of show. Scooby-Doo has endured for decades, and has numerous takes on these iconic characters, but this is the worst I've seen. First of all, this show has absolutely no concern with Scooby-Doo's history or characterizations, and the characters are basically just wearing similar clothes to the originals, but that's literally it. They haven't just been race swapped, their personalities are totally different, and they're all pretty unlikable. It feels more like some kind of Mindy Kaling mystery show, and then having a really thin Scooby-Doo layer of paint on top of it. The writing heavily relies on stereotypes. Pretty much every character is flanderized and stereotyped in some ridiculous way. It's probably for the best that Scooby wasn't allowed to be in this. At least he gets to come out unscathed. Velma is a big-headed jerk who thinks she's better than everybody else. She's really judgy and just assumes everything about other people. They claim Daphne had no personality originally and was only there to be hot, only to immediately sexualize her the first scene she's in. They also go on and on about how she's a bitch and a slut, and abandon her friends because she only cares about being popular. Yeah, that's a total upgrade from the original. Then we go from Ultra Instinct Shaggy, a meme that was so popular Warner Brothers actually started including it in media, to this.
Will I sell you a kidney to get the $500 I need to make Velma date me? I mean, I'd be a fool not to at this point, right?
His whole thing is that he's trying to get Velma to date him, but she doesn't take him seriously. He's even willing to sell his organs to get money so he can basically bribe her into dating him.
In teen movies, whenever a girl needs money, a guy sells something and then blackmails the girl into dating him for it. Problematic, but effective.
It's really sad. At least they didn't go the easy route and make him a junkie, so I guess there's that. Fred is now rich, with his parents owning a haberdashery, which is basically just an excuse to make fun of his ascot, and Fred himself is typically the butt of jokes. In the previews, they stated that he hasn't finished puberty yet, but really what they mean by that is that he has a small penis, which they constantly bring up over and over again, despite the fact that he's 15.
You didn't mention Fred had a tiny dong.
Oh yeah, real baby carrot. And I'm gonna ride it all the way to victory.
Would you do me a favor and just go ahead and seat right everything else in the bar, please?
Also, his dad is upset that he doesn't drink alcohol regularly and still eats pancakes.
You're embarrassing yourself, Frederick. It's bad enough you still eat pancakes and drink non-alcoholic beverages like a baby.
First of all, again, he's 15, and he probably shouldn't be pressuring his underage son to drink alcohol in front of a lawyer, or, you know, in general. But also, since when is there an age limit on pancakes? Who doesn't like pancakes? But his dad has to be some kind of epitome of toxic masculinity, and apparently that means no pancakes. Even the stereotypes in this show are weird. Also, his dad is voiced by Frank Welker, who has been the voice of Freddy for literally 50 years, and that just makes me sad. He shouldn't have to do this. I know a paycheck is a paycheck, but still. One of the first jokes involves two cockroaches getting freaky. How is that even funny? It's not, but it's gross, and gross means funny, apparently. Along with gross out humor, it relies really heavily on meta humor, where they'll call out tropes and then say how stupid and lazy they are while also playing those tropes mostly straight.
You ever noticed how pilot episodes of TV shows always have more gratuitous sex and nudity than the rest of the series?
It pretty much relies on the logic of if you point out how bad it is, it's not bad when you do it because you're self-aware about it. But it doesn't actually work that way, and it just makes them look worse because they know what they're doing is bad, but they're doing it anyway. Also, these characters are canonically 15, but they go so far out of their way to sexualize them. If they're going to make an adult-oriented comedy, they could at least use adult characters. It's so creepy, and it just keeps getting worse. First they gawk at their bodies, then they have Daphne get into a fight with another girl, and it's pretty messed up. Daphne keeps bashing her head into the floor, and she has this crazy smile on her face when she's doing it. And then Velma shows up with a cane, and she uses it to bash Daphne into a locker, and then asks her how she feels about race-blind casting. A direct reference to the show. Is this supposed to be clever? It feels like they're patting themselves on the back for bad jokes. The show starts with Velma and the girls discovering a dead body in the locker room. It's one of Daphne's popular friends, Brenda. Initially, Velma is blamed for it, because she has a reputation of hating the populars to the point where she has a habit of threatening to kill them.
I could kill them all! Okay, I see how this looks bad.
and she did attack Daphne just before the body was discovered, so Velma seeks to clear her name by ultimately pinning it on Fred, even though it's pretty obvious he's also innocent, but she's convinced that since he's a rich, mediocre white boy with a small penis, he has to be guilty.
Why wouldn't he? If I were a rich white dude, I'd kill everybody just to get away with it. Fred's a rich white guy with a tiny dong. He did it.
Well, that's messed up. Norville tries to help Velma because he has a crush on her, but she doesn't like him back. In fact, when he does confess, she totally laughs in his face. It's really sad. Norville explains that Brenda was on the student newspaper with him, and she mentioned she was taking pictures in the bathroom at the local diner, which apparently has a reputation for being a popular teen hookup spot. Velma thinks that the camera might have evidence that she can use to clear her name, so she sets out to find it. The problem is Velma has trouble solving mysteries because she blames herself for her mother's disappearance. She liked solving mysteries as a child, so she ended up finding her Christmas presents early, so her mom went out so she can buy her something that she can unwrap on Christmas and still be surprised, but she never came back. Personally, if I had a kid who did that, I would just let them not be surprised. This is what you wanted, Santa's not coming this year. So now whenever she does try to solve a mystery, she ends up having terrible hallucinations that cause her so much stress her heart could give out. But she saw that her dad and his pregnant girlfriend had a camera and wonders if they stole it. Also, remember when I said that they had to sexualize characters, sexualize adults and not minors? Forget I said that. Don't sexualize adults either. Because there's a scene where her dad takes naked pregnant photos of his girlfriend and it's so weird. What even is this? Just because it's shocking doesn't mean it's funny. Oh my gosh. But it turns out that camera wasn't stolen, and the girlfriend actually helps Velma recover from her hallucinations, so that was nice of her. She ends up running into Fred outside of the diner. He was hiding because he can't stop crying over the loss of Brenda, but he doesn't want to appear unmanly. Fred has some kind of illness where he can't recognize people who aren't hot, so he mistakes Velma for a stranger and thinks it's okay to confide in her because he's never going to see her again. However, Velma also confides in him, explaining the situation with her missing mother and her hallucinations, and the pair end up bonding. Fred is even able to remember Velma's name, even though he still doesn't think she's hot, which is a big step for him. He even stands up for her when the rest of the class is bullying her because they think she's the murderer. Even admitting he talked to her could ruin his reputation, which is the most important thing to him, but he still risks it, getting everyone on her side. This doesn't stop her from assuming that he's the murderer though. Basically, Velma manages to track down the camera that Brenda was using and finds it at Fred's house. It turns out she was in the bathroom taking pictures, and since Fred is self-conscious about his body, he kicks everybody out of the bathroom so he can use it alone. But Brenda was hiding in the stall and she took pictures of him naked. Oh my gosh! So he tells Velma that he's going to do to her what he did to Brenda. He tries to bribe her to keep quiet about his body, but she takes all of this as confirmation that he killed her, and basically refuses to listen. And Daphne's lesbian cop moms come in guns blazing. Literally, they shoot him in both thighs, and also don't read him his rights. Velma's actually proud of herself after this, which says a lot about her. But when Norville takes her home, the two of them discover another body in Velma's recycling bin, and even though the body is here, and she just saw Fred, they still assume that Fred did it, and they don't do any detective work or ask any questions. How long has the body been dead? Where was Fred during all that time? Why is the body here in front of Velma's house? Does Fred even have the medical knowledge to remove people's brains? Pretty basic questions that they just don't ask. Not to mention the first body was discovered in Velma's locker, and the second one they found is on her property, so there's some kind of connection to Velma. Either way, she should be asking questions. Anyway, Fred gets hauled off. How is he walking? He got shot in the thighs. He needs to go to the hospital. But the big dark secret comes out when Fred accidentally steps on his robe, so it opens up, and everybody takes pictures. Again, he is 15, and for some reason his dad is more concerned about people thinking his son is small instead of protecting his 15-year-old son. Velma doesn't realize that he's innocent until she sees him trying to eat. Apparently he's so rich that for his entire life people have been cutting his food for him, to the point where he can't actually cut his food himself, so there's no way he could have cut those girls' brains out. I'd argue that doesn't really make sense though. In the previous episode, when everyone was still against Velma thinking she was the murderer, the student body attacks her, including throwing a very heavy paper cutter at her. Fred then catches the paper cutter in midair and chucks it back at the students, which takes a considerable amount of competency, so he can Waffle House Wendy a paper cutter, but he can't cut a steak. Also, he cuts off a kid's foot doing this, but for some reason, no one acknowledges it, including the kid who got his foot cut off. He doesn't react at all. On top of that, he goes out of his way to get the student body off of Velma's case by standing up for her and insisting she's no murderer, and it works. But then Velma stabbed him in the back by accusing him of being the murderer. Everyone would still hate her if it weren't for Fred, but she can't see past her own biases. And then when she's called as a witness at the trial, instead of being rational, she decides to publicly humiliate him to prove his innocence. This backfires, however, because he gets so upset by everyone laughing at him that he confesses to the murders just so he can be seen as manly. To make things worse, Fred's lawyer was Velma's dad, so now he's disgraced and they're broke. So good job there, Velma. She ruined Fred's life, her dad's, her life. Meanwhile, with Daphne, she was Fred's girlfriend, but he got arrested. Plus, she was bored with him anyway, since he was refusing to sleep with her. In this version, Daphne is adopted, and she's determined to find her birth parents, and in order to save up money for this endeavor, she sells drugs. Which seems weird. You think she'd be like a TikTok influencer or something. She could probably get money from sponsorships. Or she could do the tried and true sell vintage clothes on Etsy, but they're actually just from the Goodwill. But no, she sells drugs. Who's her supplier? Anyway, Velma goes to her to get the file for her mom's missing persons case, since her moms are cops and they have access to it. But Daphne refuses unless she gives her $500. But Velma's broke, so she decides to go to Norval for it. He doesn't have the money on hand, so he tries to sell his stuff for her, only to end up on the black market, where he almost gets suckered into selling his kidney. But luckily the place gets held up by another criminal, and the police end up coming around to investigate. Which is good because Velma is not worth losing a kidney over. But this was his whole characterization in these 2 episodes. It's pretty sad. So Daphne recruits Velma to earn the file by having her sell drugs. And to top it all off, the drugs are named after Scooby-Doo references. Zoinks, Jeepers, Jinkies, even the Mystery Machine. First they called the Mystery Machine the weird sex van, and now this. Seriously? They can at least try to pretend they don't hate the source material. This show is just mean-spirited, out-of-touch nonsense.
And yeah, normally in pop culture, when a slutty girl is murdered, we're all a little like, well, maybe she deserved it. But that is what made Brenda so special. She was the rare that did not deserve to be murdered.
Velma's supposed to be smart, but she's so blinded by her own biases and stereotypes that she doesn't realize things that are obvious. The characterization is a mess, most of the characters are flat out unlikable, and the humor is awful. The animation is all over the place. Sometimes it looks alright, the backgrounds look pretty nice, but the art style varies wildly. Sometimes characters on screen look like they don't belong in the same show. Who is this show even made for? We've already had numerous origin stories for Scooby-Doo, and this one doesn't even have Scooby, so what's the point?
Poor us. Without Scooby, we haven't got a show, Daphne.
Why bother connecting it to a franchise that they clearly have no interest in? I guess it was just money. We'll have to see if that ended up panning out for them. So far it doesn't look like it, but that's my opinion. What do you guys think? What's your favorite version of Scooby-Doo? Because this definitely is not it. Well, leave your comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Before I go, I want to give a shout out to the channel's members. Stutania, Tyrant Carnivore, Adam K, Shiny Orc Boy, The Rabbit Mancer, General Bolivar, Depth Charge Media, Samaru 163, Gabby Hime, Sandy Martin, Verdant Range, JVR, Hussyman 42, Nixel, Eric Griffin, Bill C, Taylor Ramirez, Caleb Nelson, Bandito Bane, Dakari the Professor, Equestron, Owen Wildish, Norman Sweet Cream, Way Beyond Coincidence, Garcia, XV Legend, and Hunter Rose. Thank you all so much for your support, and if you'd like to support the channel as a member, you can hit the join button next to the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this content, you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, and that part's free. We also have Buy Me Coffee if you want to support us that way. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.